At the risk of sounding like an AI optimist, there's a few studies that I really wish more of you AI bros online would read before you make these really bold, blanket, kind of dumb statements about AI replacing all developers. I want to go through two studies that are really interesting and that also kind of break this myth out there that AI is just going to replace all developers. I don't want to sound like I'm one of those people that's like the opposite of doom and gloom because I really don't like the doom and gloom narrative. I think it's dumb. I think it's lazy. I think it's also just misinformed at best. And I think it's ill intentioned at worst and often used by snake oil salesmen who want to either sell you something or get likes and clicks and views and all this kind of stuff. So I don't want to sound like I'm the total opposite and being like, oh, yeah, don't worry at all. Like the reality is, we don't know. I don't know. I do know this. There are much smarter people than you and perhaps me that are saying, hey, this isn't everything it's cracked up to be. Could it be that because there's billions of dollars in investment, tons of companies essentially restructuring, reorganizing to take advantage of what potentially could be a gold rush to build stuff, and then saying, we need to tell our investors, the public, the news that we don't need developers anymore. We don't need anybody. We can do everything with AI, or at least it's making us so much more productive because that would justify the cost, right? Well, the AWS, Amazon Web Services CEO, said this. He says, using AI to replace junior staff is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm not going to read the full article here, but he has some really interesting points. In fact, some points that I didn't really think of, but he asks one very, very poignant question. How's that going to work? When 10 years in the future, you have no one that has learned anything. My view is you absolutely want to keep hiring kids out of college and teaching them the right ways to build software and decompose problems and think about it just as much as you ever have. And when he talks about things like how much code does AI contribute to an organization, this is a metric that people love to toss around like, oh, 50% of our code is written by AI. He just flat out says that's a silly metric because while organizations can use AI to write infinitely more lines of code, it could be bad code. Does anybody understand that just writing code is like any idiot could write some code, right? You could just copy and paste some code online and dump it somewhere in your browser or whatever and hack yourself and be a fool, right? Plenty of people have made really, really bad software that has killed people, that has destroyed banking institutions, that has hacked people and given all sorts of viruses to the world. There's lots of bad software out there. Why is this a surprise to people? And the idea that just because you can write code or AI could write code, that it would naturally be better than humans at doing it. When, meanwhile, you can go on YouTube, you can go on Twitter, LinkedIn especially, and you can read AI generated slop that no one wants to read. No one really wants to see an AI movie. No one really wants to see AI YouTube shorts or even AI videos. People often get called out from that kind of stuff because it's just not interesting. We're humans and we like to work with other humans. I know code is not some sort of like way to communicate with other humans, or maybe you don't see it that way. But at the end of the day, the code written by a human has a critical eye, lots of context, and lots of learning through trial and error within the business or within that particular code base. This leads me to a study from the people at Meter, which is a research institute that studies AI. Also, Cornell did a similar study. Actually, this is based on Cornell's study. So this isn't some random group of people or just some like shady group out there that is have some sort of special interest group that is attached to them. And they had a very, very interesting observation or conclusion at the end of this experiment. They say we find that when developers use AI tools, they took a group of open source developers. Now, open source developers are the people making open source software, if that wasn't super clear already. These people are generally cracked developers. These are the people writing the open source code for things like React or that date library you use. Basically, the people building the bricks on the fragile ecosystem that all software sits on. Being an open source software developer generally is looked at as one of those like badges of honor. It can help you get employed. All I'm saying is these aren't like junior developers making trivial little apps or anything like that. These are open source software developers who are on the senior side, right? When they use these AI tools, Meter found out they take 19% longer than without. AI makes them slower. Even more interesting is that even though it took them 19% longer to complete issues, a significant slowdown that goes against developer beliefs and expert forecasts, developers expected AI to speed them up 24%. And even after experiencing the slowdown, they still believed AI had sped them up by 20%. That is mind blowing. So, despite them taking much longer on a task, a significant amount longer on a task. They thought they were faster. Half of them thought, oh, I actually did that faster because I was using AI, even though it had slowed them down. If you've used AI, if you're a developer using AI and you're working on something non trivial on a team of like more than two people with some sort of quality standards, you've no doubt felt this yourself, right? Everybody has had this experience that I know. You're sitting down, you want AI to do something for you, you write it out in really great detail, you have some sort of rules file, you're doing all the things that you've been told you're supposed to do to make yourself really, really efficient. Then you sit down and you begin to code, or you rather watch the AI code, and it just goes off the rails at some point, and it makes something that has a tons of console logs and stupid rocket ships and these functions which are massive, and you're thinking, you just wrote 1,000 line long file for something that could be done in 200 lines. Basically, you've added unnecessary complexity, and I'm having to go back over, and you've got me, kind of there, right? Like you've basically done what it needed you to do, but now I have to clean up all the mess. And maybe that's not a big deal to you. You're thinking, well, now I'm just like cleaning up the mess. But then you discover within that mess, there's certain things that are not quite working right. And if you try to add more AI onto it and more AI and more AI, you get into this really tangled web. And if you're using something like Claude, which doesn't have version control in it, you can get yourself in such a bad predicament. And there's no stopping point. There's no way to go back. Hey, go back to this changer, go back to that changer, go back to the last three changes. There's no mechanism to do that. With Cursor, there is luckily, but with Claude, you can get into such a big mess that now you're going to have to basically throw away your entire work, which is terrible. And I know people say, oh, you could just git commit every single time you do that. But let's be honest, who's doing that? No one's really working like this. And not only that, these tokens aren't free. You're paying for this slop so that you can then massage it into something that makes sense. If you're a student working on things, this is probably a godsend, right? You can actually one shot most of your homework with this kind of stuff. If you're a front end developer working at a really early stage startup and you just need to build like a little UI that doesn't really have to function that well, this is probably like magic, right? Because it's just blowing it out the water. If you're building a data pipeline that cannot break and needs to go to production and needs to get input from various people and needs to have tests and unit tests and integration tests associated with it, this is when AI becomes not only not a great use, but can really, really be dangerous to use and can end up costing your company money and potentially maybe even your job. And by the way, if you want to read more about the study, I'll have it in the show notes, but this is not like some fly by night study at all. This is 16 developers with moderate AI experience completing 246 tasks in mature projects, which they have an average of 5 years prior experience. Each task is randomly assigned to allow or disallow usage of early 2025 AI tools. I don't know what to tell people anymore. I'm getting a little sick of the argument that, the replacement theory or the it's making you so productive, we'll have to hire less theory. I don't see any of these as reality. Apparently, neither does the AWS CEO. Google also did its own study where they saw developers increase productivity by around 10%. They're incentivized, of course, to probably even give a bigger number. So 10% seems really, really moderate and realistic. That's not a insignificant change. Does that mean it's going to change how they're hiring on a large level? I would assume not. And because you can't fully replace software developers, you're making a very big gamble by not hiring any junior developers because at some point, junior developers become senior developers move on either to retirement or into management or positions where they don't write code all day long. So who just fills in these positions? And if you just say AI, then you've lost the whole point of this episode. Just turn it off. Anyways, I hope that before you just listen to idiots online that are spewing all sorts of nonsense and garbage or maybe afraid themselves, that you do just a tad bit of research. Use these tools on your own for yourself. Make your own opinions about how useful or useless they seem. I personally pay for multiple services. I do not want to come across as some AI hater or a person that is just with my head in the sand. This is one of the many reasons why at Parsity we're making a big pivot into teaching and using AI. I say AI in quotes. What we're really doing is teaching people how to integrate AI, learn retrieval augmented generation, vector databases, and a bit of like, the intuition that you can build up through learning a little bit of linear algebra and vector databases and large language models and all this kind of stuff so that you can be super duper effective in this new market and also raise above your average boot camp grad who is still learning React and SQL and Node and Express and all that stuff, which is still super useful. It's just that this new set of skills for the future, I don't see anybody really teaching that yet. And I just see that this is obviously the writing is on the wall here. So make your own opinions, check out these papers, and let me know what you think. Am I full of it? Am I just telling you this because I want you to join Parsity and I've just got my head in the sand and I don't know what I'm talking about? Or maybe there's smarter people than you or I that actually do know what they're talking about. And maybe we should give them a little bit of a listen. I don't know. See you around.